Well hey, it's officially that time of the year again. Yep, we can finally step outside for longer than 2 minutes without our flesh burning right off. It's also almost Halloween, meaning I'm sure most of you have bought all your Christmas decorations. Haha. Halloween is a holiday that means a lot to many of us. It's the one night of the year where you can express yourself in any number of creative ways. Dressing up is just part of the fun. Death isn't some hushed, taboo topic.
Harold, please.
And spooky things are everywhere. Trick or Treat is a superb little celebration of what some, including myself, would claim to be the best night of the year. Honestly, it's a bit unfortunate that we don't have many options of movies or specials that so predominantly embellish the true essence of the holiday in such a detailed and collective way as this film does. Everything from the attitudes to the style, there's so many oranges and reds and jack-o'-lanterns everywhere. Just the whole vibe of it feels very carefully constructed by somebody who clearly really appreciates the holiday and the origins around the festival of Samhain. And I mean, sure, we have other contenders such as like John Carpenter's Halloween, though honestly when it comes to Halloween imagery or something that acts as like a metaphor for the holiday besides being somewhat of a backdrop, I think Season of the Witch has more of a Halloween aura than the original does. It largely taps into how the holiday has become like so overtly consumeristic and commercialized. I mean, it leads to a boy's head turning into a pile of mush and bugs. It's fucking wild. And hot take, I think it's the best sequel. I really wish the anthology thing stuck around. I mean, sure, maybe it would have made Michael Myers less iconic, but maybe it would have made the series more interesting or unique for the time.
Totally.
Though while we're on the topic of anthologies, this is also an anthology flick, tackling 5 separate stories that are all interlaced together on the same night in the same town, each embodying the different stages of life one experiences the holiday, featuring a variety of fears and unknown dangers lurking around in the night, which is kind of a neat idea, you know? And I feel like it's one that isn't common in most other movies that use this kind of structure. Typically, they're all detached from one another and find a way to break continuity, or in the case of All Hallows Eve, are just vignettes being watched like it's The Ring, though lamer because it's mostly just women getting brutally tortured. But no, here we jump around to certain characters, sometimes giving a new perspective on what we've seen in previous segments, tying everything together with these comic book, creepshow style cutaways and time cards in the corner of the screen, giving you a frame of reference as to when in the night these events are occurring. Fun fact, originally there was going to be a 4-part series of comics, since the film was going to be distributed by Warner Brothers. They were planning to do a launch alongside the release of the film, though things changed, however, but we'll get into that in a minute. And instead they released it in 2009, attaching all 4 issues into one graphic novel adaptation, with a second novel titled Trick or Treat Days of the Dead, which came out in October of 2015. Michael Dougherty helped with cover designs and concepts, and you can tell that this was very much a passion project for him. The film was originally based on a short animation he created in the mid-90s called Season's Greetings, which later was going to be used for the title of the film also, but they decided to change it because it sounded too much like a Christmas thing, and that's disgusting, so they picked Trick or Treat instead. Not Trick or Treat, because that was already taken by the 1986 Metal film. I mean, honestly, there aren't many titles left at this point. We have Halloween and all of those, Trick or Treat, 31, All Hallows Eve, Halloween Night, Tales of Halloween, Halloween Town. What else is there? Boo a Medea Halloween?
I don't like this. I don't like this. I don't.
If only titles were the worst of their issues, but no, because even though they had the film all ready to go for an October release in 2007, Warner Bros. Held it back for a number of reasons. Prime reason being that they felt mainstream audiences would be turned off by the excessive violence towards children. But also, I feel like that's kind of the point. It's supposed to be unfortunate. But also, I mean, like, this was around the time of the Saw franchise and grindhouse gritty horror. Rob Zombie's Halloween came out the same year. I just don't get how this movie was considered too controversial for the time. I feel like there was more extreme stuff coming out. Though in saying that, this wasn't the only thing holding Trick or Treat back, as the studio didn't have much faith in the project to begin with because of the box office failure of Superman Returns, which Michael Dougherty wrote. They also were skeptical since this was an anthology film, and those typically are very hit or miss. Most of the time they don't go over so well with mainstream audiences because it's very confusing to keep track track of everything, so they put it on the back burner. It premiered at a few film festivals over a couple of years, and then they just dropped it on home video in 2009, because I think to this day, Warner Brothers are desperately trying to massacre their own company. Interesting thing, however, since it's gained such a devoted cult following, 15 years later, it's finally getting a worldwide theatrical release in some select theaters. Currently, by the time this video drops, it's happening throughout the month, so that's something, at least. Now, as we all know, horror movies typically follow a set of guidelines, a standard in order to successfully survive them, and Trick or Treat does not deviate from this, but it does put an interesting twist on it. Basically, every tale has a list of rules and customs the characters must abide by to survive none other than Halloween itself. Because if you don't, well, then you die. On Halloween, there are no second chances at redemption, and the first story doesn't mess around, establishing its tone very early on. It follows a school principal, who is also secretly the town's serial killer, who takes Halloween very seriously by killing a child for stealing all the candy out of the Pick One candy bowl and eating it without checking it for cyanide beforehand.
Always check your candy.
Also, he was going around smashing jack-o'-lanterns, which is the biggest sin of the holiday because originally it was believed that they helped ward off evil spirits and demons who roamed the night. They acted as a safety net, a barrier of protection, so anytime that they're harmed, it most certainly will lead to unfortunate outcomes, which is the subtle way of saying death will occur. Honestly, this is like the less graphic and more Halloween version of Saw when you think about it. Instead of somebody being forced to make a decision between life and death, even if the odds are very much against them most of the time, here it's picking a trick or a treat. Interesting. Anyways, the rest of the time we spend with the principal stressfully trying to bury the body, only he keeps getting interrupted by his son and his grumpy old neighbor. It's the best kind of absurdity.
Happy Halloween. Screw you!
The poor guy is just trying to bury this child and the rest of the world just won't let him have it.
Watch Charlie Brown, and I'll be in a minute.
Charlie Brown's an asshole.
Well, eventually he does, and he and his son spend the evening carving the head of the child that he murdered and buried in his backyard. Father-son goals? This is the first main storyline, the one that depicts the very earliest childhood attachment with the holiday. It's pretty simple, most of it's built off of one joke, but hey, the timing is great and it's pretty entertaining in its dark, tongue-in-cheek kind of way. The holiday itself is kind of like a dark comedy when you think about it. What a start. I mean, technically it's not the first. There is a cold open, which since we're going in order by age, we'll get to that one later. For now though, our next tale is about something many of us come to realize during our adolescent years. Kids are kind of assholes. It also kind of has this like Scooby-Doo vibe to it, specifically the Zombie Island special, which funnily enough is playing on TV in one of our later stories. I'm telling you, this movie has it all. It just needs Tim Curry singing Anything Can Happen on Halloween and it would be practically perfect.
This scary, creepy.
That's right, kiddos. This is my Rocky Horror sequel, god damn it. Anywho, this segment chronicles a group of trick-or-treaters going around and collecting jack-o'-lanterns and getting into mischief, such as going to a nearby flooded quarry on a dark and foggy Halloween night to tell urban legends. Though unlike other fun and innocent enough spooky legends, this one is pretty morbid and makes you wonder what the hell is going on in this town. Basically, years ago, a bunch of parents came together and hatched a devious plan to get rid of their kids because they were too much of a burden and embarrassment because they all had mental illnesses. And so they hired a bus driver to chain them down to then drive their kids off a cliff into a lake. I wonder why this was controversial. Trick or Treat is quite a collection of cautionary tales, and this flashback definitely is the most upsetting in its tragedy and the execution of the events. According to the narration done by Macy, who recites all of this in the most emotionless way, allegedly the crime was covered up by the town because it would have been too much of a detriment, meaning the driver made it out scot-free and hasn't been heard from since. I wonder if this has any future correlations with another story. Spoiler alert. Yes. So surprise, surprise, this is the same quarry from that accident, and our group of kids are trying to pay their respects by leaving out 8 jack-o'-lanterns symbolic of those same 8 kids. Though again, there's always a point where the narrative is subverted. They play an awful, traumatizing prank because they deep down have no real empathy for those who are neurodivergent.
Is that Rod another retard?
And then they blow out all the jack-o'-lanterns, and then karma. The 8 spirits are resurrected from the dead, and everyone dies except for the one who isn't uninformed with the holiday's rules and regulations. Though she's very desensitized to all of this somehow. Like, yeah, they were all assholes, but she just walks away as they're screaming bloody murder and being disemboweled, and that's that. This one's actually probably the best out of all of them. It's the most fleshed out plot-wise and has the best characterization and themes. It's also the best in visuals and atmosphere, utilizing a lot of dark shadows and cooler bluish gray tones, lots of fog. This one highlights the most out of the origins of Samhain and the ancient traditions as well, through a character that is treated poorly, though comes out on top by the end, which is awesome. Next up, we enter into our 20s, the party years. Unlike the popular ancient understandings where we were costumes to blend in, disguising ourselves with all the rotted, mutated creatures and evil spirits that supposedly return to Earth, now we dress up as Pickle Rick or whatever. Though some, such as Lori, aren't so into that, going for a more conservative, less revealing outfit, which her sister and friends tease her over for not being like the other girls and being a virgin.
It's practically stapled to your forehead.
The biggest concern, especially if you live in Salem, Massachusetts.
A virgin lit the candle.
This one does a good job exploring how the holiday shifts in a major way into a whole other kind of meaning as we move beyond adolescence into our early adulthood. Dressing up is no longer based around trick-or-treating, it's a whole other celebration. Lori spends the night at the town festival looking for a guy to hook up with because her friends won't leave her alone about it. She comes in contact with a mysterious and unsettling vampire in the woods who assaults her, and then there's yet another twist. I think it's the most memorable thing about this specific story. It turns out the guy was actually Mr. Wilkins, aka the school principal who, if you forgot, carves the head of children with his 8-year-old son. So shocker, killing the innocent is one of the major inexcusable acts that one can take part in on the holiday, which is funny and ironic because the only reason he killed Charlie was for breaking the rules. Halloween also doesn't like hypocrisy. Then we get yet another reveal, though this one's a little more obvious as it's pretty constantly foreshadowed. The girls are actually werewolves who rip off their human costumes in an erotic striptease kind of fashion as Lori joins in and eats Mr. Wilkins. Honestly, for this being pre-Twilight hype, this is some pretty great fan fiction. It's also interesting to see this subversion of the final girl trope, revealing that they weren't actually the ones in danger after all, and secretly were performing this dark, seductive ritual of sorts. Though on another note, what's up with this little trick-or-treat? In our fourth and penultimate tale, which is also the film's cold open, we are introduced to a couple walking home from the festival. Emma is annoyed by the holiday, it's no longer as fun as it used to be, so she decides to take down all their Halloween decorations that night. Though Henry, being a Halloween advocate, insists that this was probably not a good idea and that they could just wait and do it tomorrow, because you never know, something bad might happen. Though she ignores his warnings, begins taking everything down, gets attacked, and becomes a Halloween decoration herself. Oh, the irony. There isn't much involved here, though as a cold open, it does tell the viewer a lot about the certain guidelines to surviving Halloween and the repercussions one will face for undermining them. It's the most detached from all the other ones, though Emma does make a brief cameo in the previous storyline. But beyond that, this is merely a nice middle ground after our party years and before our Chapter 5. I don't know why I'm calling them chapters suddenly. So we're all familiar with Ebenezer Scrooge, right? The greedy old miser despises Christmas, gets visited by 3 ghosts, well, technically 4, goes through a character arc, yada yada yada. It's the most popular Christmas story. There are so many adaptations out there. Anyways, this is the Halloween equivalent to that. The ultimate showdown against none other than Sam, who is the holiday mascot, the enforcer of all the rules, whose name is also derived from Samhain, which is commonly mispronounced as Samhain. So in A Christmas Carol, Ebenezer encounters the ghosts that show him his past, present, and future. Yet Sam, on the other hand, doesn't waste waste time with the ghosts of Halloween whatever. He's just here to give this John Carpenter geezer-looking guy the worst night of his life. Seriously, it's kind of darkly hilarious, like a more violent version of Dennis the Menace or something. Now, Sam originated in the season's greeting short as a young trick-or-treater who comes face-to-face with a boogeyman-like presence, playing off of this stranger danger theme, though similar to how Trick-or-Treat is with its themes and messages, it subverts the cliche by having Sam attack, killing who we suspect was the attacker. Though this time around, however, Sam is more fleshed out as a hero, a supernatural entity. At first, it's believed that he's just a cute but mischievous child, only to find out that his actual form is that of a sinister great pumpkin.
You gotta be fucking kidding me.
Surprisingly, for who is often described as the most iconic figure in the film, he hardly does anything until the final segment, mostly just acting as an observer to all the different events playing out over the night, until he needs to step in and defend the holiday from Hannibal Mr. Krieg. Krieg is the holiday-hating neighbor who we first meet in the principal story when Steve Wilkins was busy doing some late-night landscaping. It's also subtly disclosed that he was the bus driver who took part in the school bus massacre, and since has quit his job, changed his name, and now is living alone, resenting the holiday for what happened on that day all those years ago.
Happy Halloween.
Screw you!
And then Sam shows up and kicks his ass for about 8 minutes. It's pretty, fun, wild. It's something. In the end, he survives by coincidence. All Sam wanted was some Halloween candy, and then he gets a visit by the spirits of the dead children, one of which says the thing, "Trick or treat." Also, the end of the movie connects to the start of the movie to imply that the ignorance is a cycle that will continue to manifest and never cease to exist. Sam will always be needed. It's worth pointing out how this story is often judged for ripping off the 1985 Tales from the Darkside episode, Halloween Candy. For those unfamiliar, Tales from the Darkside was an anthology horror series in the 80s, sort of like an older teen version of Goosebumps or like The Twilight Zone. And to be honest, after watching just this episode alone, I have to say that I think Trick or Treat did it better, but also I don't think it would be very fair to put the two against each other. One is a low-budget TV episode and the other one is a movie, so it has like better acting, cinematography, lighting, and just the overall production differences are very night and day. I like how the special largely works off of the suspense and the psychological element, which is interesting, but I don't know, it's fine for what it is, just a little bit on the underwhelming side, I'd say. I get horror special effects legend Tom Savini directed it, and that's cool, I guess, but I don't know, I don't have nostalgia for it, so to me, it's just a thing that exists. All right, lastly, I guess I'm gonna rank all 5 of these now because why not? This won't be like a worst to best ranking, but more of a most enjoyed to not enjoyed as much, though still pretty decent ranking. Starting at number 5, The Cold Open. Number 4, Principal. Number 3, Surprise Party. Number 2, Sam, which is the follow-up story to number 1, The Halloween School Bus Massacre. Overall, Trick or Treat is a perfect bag of Halloween candy. You never quite know what you're gonna get, but it has a little something for everyone to enjoy, especially those who love the holiday. It's become such a cult classic with so many devoted fans over the years that have been wondering, when will it be getting a sequel? Which leaves me with this question. Does it need one? I mean, don't get me wrong, I think there are many possible directions to take it, explore more with Sam as a character and dissect other holiday legends and tropes, but also I feel like they fully nailed it the first time, and sequels built around nostalgia, hype, and fan service are a really big thing right now, so I'm split on it. I just hope there's enough of an incentive to branch out in a new direction and not just make callbacks. Though, how do you feel about Trick or Treat or Halloween? Make sure to like, subscribe, and whatever you do, don't blow out that fucking jack-o'-lantern. Anyways, thanks for watching, and happy Halloween. Whoa, that was fucking embarrassing.